Awesome.
Welcome. So we are here with my friend Rudy Tinoco, otherwise known as Pastor Rudy Tinoco, all the way from Forest Grove, Oregon, right?
Yep.
Forest Grove, the city.
Yeah.
Is it small town?
Yeah, small town. Well, like 28, close to 28,000 people, I believe we're up to now. So that's relatively small. It's a little college town here. Pacific University is right here in our backyard. Beautiful little place. And it looks like it sounds. Lots of trees, lots of green, and it's stunning. It's really, just looking out my window, there's mountains all along the top of the houses there. So it's just really beautiful out here.
Nice. Most people probably have heard of Portland. Where are you from Portland?
Yeah, we're about maybe 20 miles west of Portland, so it's not too far from us.
So you're closer to the coast.
Well, actually, we're closer to Portland. And what's great about where we're living at is, not too far. You can be in the snow on Mount Hood, messing about there. You go the other direction about, 50 minutes. You're right there at the Oregon coast. It's stunning.
Man.
And then
Beautiful.
You get city life here in Portland, which is not so beautiful right now. It's a hot mess over there. But we're
in Portland. I know that's like, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that, about what's going on in Portland. Maybe not too much of the political side, but kind of from the spiritual ministerial side. But so you pastor Old Town Church, right?
Yeah, we have a cool story. I won't belabor it too much, but I was formerly a campus pastor of Sunrise Church in Hillsboro. So I was the pastor of the Forest Grove campus. I was the campus pastor, was what I was referred to. And we began to really grow to the point where we had to find a different building because we just couldn't fit there. And I was looking for all sorts of options, talked to the high school here, Forest Grove High School, which that was an option and a possibility for us. But as we were praying, God came through, man, and a church up the road, it was First Baptist Church, Forest Grove. They came to me, and I'm friends with many of the folks there, and they said, "Rude, we love what you guys are doing. You're growing. Things were not growing there." And they said, "We want to give you the building for free.
Wow.
No strings attached. You don't need to take our leaders with you. None of that. Just, we want to come together with you. We'll become one body and move forward." And we're Old Town Church now. And
Nice.
It's just been incredible. Like, who does that, man? Gives their church building. You know how people are, man. Church folk, they can tend to hold on to stuff so tightly, and for them to open-handedly give us this facility, man, you got to see it, bro. One day when you come.
Yeah, over. I do want to come out there. So, here's what I need you to do: is rub a little bit of that. Somebody gave me a building anointing off on us. We need a building ourselves. Of course, we're in the COVID caution zone still a little bit out here, so people are staying away. But so your church, I think you said pre-COVID average Sunday was about 600 people on the course of a weekend.
We keep bumping up against that number. So I would say more on average, we have like 500, 525, and then we'll hit like 600, and then it goes back to 5. So
Nice.
I'm not quite sure what the growth barrier is in there, but I've been growing in that understanding that really at the end of the day, man, we could have 1,000, but if we have 1,000 people in the place, but they're not on mission and actually actively pursuing Christ and serving their neighbors, and I just really, who wants that? I don't want that. So I've come to appreciate smaller communities who are actively serving transforming their community.
Right.
So we've been doing that in many ways here.
Awesome. So how have you been doing that?
Well,
I know you're like very personable, right? You go out and you just hang out and do By the way, Rudy is also a magician and a musician. You sing. Are you a painter also?
I kind of like the jack of all trades,
dance and paint and everything too?
But yeah, and maybe I'll have to explain a little bit in a little bit about the magic, because sometimes people say Rudy's a magician, yes, Christians lose their stuff. Do you like, why?
I think you froze on me. We'll give him a second here to see if it comes back in. Text him. Let's see. Again, this being the first Facebook, is anybody over there? I'll just jump over here and see if anybody's chatting and commenting.
There you go. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
I did a disappearing act. See?
Voila.
Anyway, I just was saying I'll explain that later on, because of course I get questioned a lot about that, how I can practice magic, which is not, again, I can explain what that really is.
So there's Christians that would be upset with you performing magic tricks. We're talking like card tricks.
Dude, I've had people straight up leave the church because they can't bear it. Even when I've
really
with them, why? I guess why not just get into it right here? See, because obviously the Bible has stuff to say about those who practice sorcery, and in the book of Acts it talks about specifically those who practice magical arts. So they're obviously the Bible,
like witchcraft.
Or witchcraft, of course. And it's Acts 19:19, I believe, is where it talks about the magical arts, which interestingly, if you look at the Greek word that's translated magical arts, like look it up, if you get it, you can just Google it and you'll see the actual literal translation is oddness. I forget what the actual Greek word is, but how do you get magical arts oddness? Now, sorcery is an interesting thing. And you already probably know this, but sorcery in the Greek is pharmakeia.
Pharmakeia, yeah, where we get pharmacy, drugs.
Yeah. And guess what? You and I both know what that kind of sorcery does and what it conjures into this world, bro. So
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, that is sorcery. And that's why my son came and bought some a cream that he bought with like some CBD stuff in it. I won't even put CBD on me. They might say it doesn't have anything in it. I don't care.
Right. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back.
Yeah, I don't want even CBD cream, bro. So, so that's sorcery. And what I'm doing, and before we leave, I can show you a silly little trick.
Yeah, we'll see a little trick, and you post your tricks online sometimes, and this little stuff that you do. I watched one that you did with your wife not too long ago. What's her name?
Charlene.
Charlene. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's just silliness. It's for the purpose of entertainment, and it's funny, and because the same Christians will bust my chops about, well, why are you doing that? It's deceptive. And well, yeah. Well, do you watch Transformers, Miss? Well, do you mean the movie Transformers? Yeah. And you get caught away in the movie magic. You let yourself go, and you're entertained. Your senses are deceived. You think that for a moment, even though you know it's not real, that these things could actually exist. So movie magic, we give ourselves over to that. It's the same thing. It's deception for the sake of entertainment. Now, are there dumb satanic movies? Yeah, dude. And there is some forms of magic that tinker with stuff, man, that I've seen books. There's magic, MAGIC, and magic, MAGICK. And when I see those books,
right.
Stuff, I don't play that. So it's
it's kind of like martial arts also, or even yoga. So like Tai Chi, yoga, some people would say yoga is all evil. Tai Chi is all evil because you're standing and you're inviting the Kundalini spirit just because you stand in a particular stance. And it's like, you're telling me that my God-given body, that if I just stand in a particular direction, I'm like somehow signaling to demons to inhabit my body. Now, if I start praying to Krishna or chanting some Vedic, mantra, you're going across the line. But anyway,
right. So that's hopefully we'll get people. And even I know some would hear that and they still won't be convinced because it's still
right.
You're deceiving people.
Well, it's tradition. It's what they're raised with, and it's what people believe. It's like tongues, it's people believing that tongues is of the devil or something like that,
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, before I went off on that tangent about magic, you asked me a question before, and I don't remember what it was. So sorry.
Well, how about this question? How did we get connected? Because that's a question that I'm at. So this is the second conversation that I've hosted. The first conversation I hosted was with Paul and Donna Harrison, an awesome couple. In fact, Rudy, you should connect with them online as well. You would like them. They're just a sweet couple, and they basically have a small group in their home in Stoke-on-Trent, England. But they're paying attention to what we're doing, somehow found us online. But it's interesting what's happening right now. A lot of people are finding our church and our ministry and paying attention to what we're doing, and it's beneficial to people. And so I kind of felt like, well, let's nurture that a little bit. As uncomfortable as that might make me, talking about the personal aspect of the connection, that I have with people, or the influence that this ministry ends up having with people.
It's
But
important to boast. I mean, you're a humble guy. I know you're not doing this to boast about how much of an impact you personally are making. It's the Spirit through you is moving, and through Forward Church is influencing a lot of people. And I'm one of those who I'm just incredibly grateful that I even have the opportunity to actually sort of shout out from the rooftops here how much you, Clint, have ministered to me personally, and really shaped a lot of the way that I communicate the gospel at Old Town Church. Seriously. So let other people toot your own horn, because I know you won't. But for those watching, and for your Forward Church family to know that you in my estimation, are one of the best Bible teachers. I know it sounds crazy. I mean, I'm telling you, I listen to Clint's messages over and over again. Some of the same ones, sometimes over and over, to let it sit in my spirit enough that my wife, when I was on the phone with Clint one time, she knew to go, "Is that Clint Byers?" And so she just recognized his voice. It's just in our house. So, really quick. So then about how I came to know about Clint's ministry and Forward Church was through a very similar traumatic demonic experience that he and I shared. And if you read Devil Walk, any of you read Devil Walk, Clint's story is my story. It's like my testimony. I've never met anyone who, like I did when I had this really horrific LSD trip, literally I thought I was dead. I thought I was dead, and now I'm in hell, and this is my punishment, and my reality around me, I'm just dreaming it. It's a figment of my wild imagination. But I'm going to experience several iterations of this hell as I descend deeper and deeper.
Yeah, exact same thing.
I can't explain the absolute terror and horror of what I went through, and I forget what happened. I think I'd already found you, Clint. I had already been listening to your messages about God's grace and love, and I think I finally went, "Who is this guy? This guy's money." And so
but you found the book. I think you found the book, right? And you read the book, and that kind of, wasn't that the introduction?
The book was afterward.
Oh, interesting.
The message of grace pulled me in.
Wow.
And I went like, "Who is this dude?" And I went and looked, and I saw you had a Devil Walk book, and I go, "What Devil Walk? What is this?" And when I read the back of that, or just the description of it,
right,
I was floored. I thought, "Oh my gosh, dude, there's so much. There's something comforting about somebody sharing that same experience." Right. It made me think, "Oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone in this." Now it is kind of crazy, but I found you because ultimately the grace message, and then the connection with you, even deeper than that, is because we have a shared experience, a traumatic experience that we're not alone either. We're not the only two. Now, since then, I've met other folks that are similar and thought they're dead, or that there's like on the Truman Show, and everything is about them.
I remember when that movie came out, it kind of triggered me a little bit, even though I was a few years removed from it. I was watching it, and at the end of it, you think, okay, your door's going to open too. Those little thoughts would creep back up. And if you've never been crazy, then you don't know what we're talking about. But if you've been crazy, you can identify. So I thought it was the other way. I thought you found the book, and then you kind of got into the messages. So that's cool. That's and so those people that are watching or listening to my sermons, and I talk about that, people reach out relatively regularly that have had similar experiences. It's really cool to be able to have this relationship with you, Rudy, that's running the same direction, or pastoring on opposite coasts, and same message, same gospel, different people, different mindsets, different culture. Although you said you're kind of in a conservative area where you live, but the, you know, the gospel is the gospel no matter where you go. So I appreciate you, you know, saying that and giving some props to the church and the ministry and the messages. You know, when I hear things like that, it is humbling, but it's also really it's encouraging. And so I would say the same thing to you, because I've watched some of your messages, and honestly, I don't like a lot of preaching. You know, I love studying the Bible, I love reading, but I just don't like a lot of preaching. There's a lot of show in it, and if I didn't know me and I watched myself, I'd probably think the same thing. I don't know, but there's just something about it that when I watch a lot of preachers, there's a lot of contradictions in the teaching, but I don't know. But I can watch you, and I actually will, and I listen to your stuff, and I jump online, and so I don't get to catch you live very often because you're out on the West Coast.
Yeah,
but afterward,
our times bump up against each other. I'll start and I'll be able to catch the beginning, but then I got to bounce. Yeah, and I think I have the same sort of feeling against. That sounds bad, but
right,
you know,
I know what you mean.
I see a lot of, you know, they change the way they talk. It's like, why are you yelling, dude? Why, you know, I understand you. I get passionate sometimes, but you know, the way they talk, it's I don't know. It's a pastor or preacher voice that they put on it.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well,
but
that's what I like about your stuff is that, you know, you're the same dude. We've never met in person, but we've done several video chats and phone chats over the years. And by the way, when was the first time that we connected? Do you remember? It had to be 6 or 7 years ago, wasn't it?
It's probably been about close to 7 years. Yeah,
gosh,
totally. Yeah. Can you believe that?
Time flies, man. But you know, that's something that I aspire to as well, and you know, that's one of the biggest compliments that people will give you about your teaching is that you know, you're the same person inside the pulpit or outside the pulpit. And I kind of think that's what the world is looking for authenticity, you know, looking for people who, you know, I was listening, and I'd never really articulated it this way, but I was listening to who I consider my pastor, you know, one of my mentors, Jim Richards, and I was watching a session from him last week maybe. And he was saying, you know, he preaches out of what he's worked out in his own life. And, you know, you're preaching from a place of experience. You're preaching from a place of, I'm wrestling with these same kinds of things as well, but I have transitioned through this. I've studied my way through this particular. I've had to because of the demonic oppression in my life, you know, and sometimes I wish that people all could have like a near death experience because you know, it changes how you see life. It eliminates a lot of fear, and it gives you the luxury of the type of perspective shift where, at least in my case, it's easy to think kingdom first, not because I'm super spiritual, but because I was so stupid that I met the devil and had this crazy experience, and it changed my entire worldview of everything. And so you just kind of live out of that. But I hear you doing that as well. You know, you're preaching what you're working out in your own life. You're walking through this process. I can't imagine, it must have been pretty difficult that you're with this organization. In fact, I think that we met before you were actually pastoring in that other ministry, and you were concerned about stepping into the ministry, and then you went ahead and transitioned on into it, and then you know, now you have your own church. And so I watched you walk through that. We didn't talk a whole lot during that time period, but I'm rambling at this point. But you know, I see you doing that as well in your ministry.
I feel like what I've been trying very much to do is I've been slaying sacred cows, I think is a way of putting it. Maybe some would say deconstructionist, but I don't. That's why I don't refer to our building, the auditorium, as the sanctuary. Okay, those things now. People say, "Well, what's the big deal?" Well, is there any harm in that? I just think people have misconstrued what church is, and here we are. Yeah, there's about 15 churches within a mile radius of ours, and some of them are really good churches. Some of the pastors are my friends, but you know, just a lot of that tradition. When we first came into that First Baptist building, there was pews, there was a cross hanging, from the ceiling, and stained glass. Well, the first thing we did was took out the pews. Not everybody was a fan of that. You think that you're ripping the cross off the wall. They're pews, or we covered up the stained glass with curtains because there's a lot of
traditions of men. You start shaking that stuff up.
Yeah, dude, and I caught some flack for that. So I tend to be that way with traditions of man. And people have misconstrued the church building as being the thing. I mean, that is church, going to church. It's been frustrating even in the midst of this COVID that I have people, and I know that my church will probably be watching this, so it's good that you hear this, that they hear this, that let me turn off my alarm, sorry about that. Everybody's like, when are we going to open the church? When are we going to open up the church? Well, we're going to follow the governor's orders at this point. We're not going to kick,
because you guys are still closed. You haven't been able to meet yet.
No, it's all been through live stream. But here's what I did is I said I'm going to open up the doors of the church on Friday. I determined this. I just felt led for 10 days, and I'll probably extend it, but for 10 days, from 7 to 8, I'm going to be there at the church praying. And I opened up the invitation to our church family to come and join me. How many folks do you think show up for that, bro? You already know. It's like, now there's a remnant. We had I think 16, okay, but we're a church again, hundreds. When are you going to open up the church? It is open. But when it comes to praying, well, we don't want to do that. What we mean is church on Sunday for the thing. It just drives me nuts. So I just I'm really about saying, stop with the building, man. Stop with the, I value it. Otherwise I wouldn't do the Sunday morning thing, but be the church. There's certain people, suffering, hurting all around you, and their needs could easily be met by the 500-600 people at Old Town if they just were activated and on mission. We could transform this community. But I'm preaching to the choir, so it's been a frustration of mine here, and that I'm trying to constantly communicate to the church families that, man, it's not about that building over there. It's be the church.
Yeah, and I think because people would know your heart. Because your theology is no condemnation for those who are in Christ, but your application is get to work, get out there. I've said this before, and it kind of upset because people, and also people too, don't, and I'm saying this as a pastor. Sometimes people look at pastors and think, well, overlook what you are doing and a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that you get to do. And sometimes I've stood up and I've said, look, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm studying all week long. I'm preparing messages. I'm coming in. I'm preaching. And again, it's not a complaining thing. So those that are listening, I love you guys. We're not complaining. This is two pastors not griping. This is not two pastors that would say, I love the ministry except for the people. And I've heard ministers say that. Neither one of us would say that. Because it's certainly people first, but I think it's the kind of the fabric of the calling. There's just kind of a fire within you to provoke people for jealousy unto good works, to push people a little bit. But I'm thinking I'm doing what I'm doing. If you would do what you're called to do, man, we would be a thriving, powerful body of Christ. And that doesn't mean catch my vision. That's one of our core values is, I don't want people to catch my vision. I want people to catch their own vision. And then I want them to articulate to me what that vision is. And if their vision fits within something that we're already doing as an organized church, then let's do that together. But if it's something that we as an organization can support you and what you're doing externally, then how can we get behind that? But a lot of people they're sitting on their gifts, they're not stepping out. And now's the time, especially now's the time.
Yeah, and people think when you're preaching the grace, and I'm trying my best, man, to ensure that I'm not commingling with the law. Sometimes that's right. It's hard. Making a legalistic thing, but when you're, I
lost you for a second there. Repeat that.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Good now.
Okay, so I guess the point that I was going to make is that it seems to be people who, if you're preaching grace unadulterated, trying to make sure you're not commingling with the law, You preach grace, you're going to get people say, you don't talk about repentance enough. There's too much grace. Then if you preach a lot of grace, then when you start telling people that you actually got to do something and get off your butt and get to the business, and they go, well, I thought you said it's about grace.
But we're
Like,
free from the law. It's like,
yeah, it's like, oh, forget. I just like throw your hands up. So it's, I just, of course, that the grace of God, Titus 2:11-12, the grace of God teaches us to say no to ungodliness.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, grace, absolutely. And grace is going to radically transform you when you capture how deeply God loves you. It'll transform you. So, I mean, that's why we're set free from, think of the stuff that we did, bro. Like heavy drugs. I used to smoke meth off a tinfoil. I didn't even have the decency to get a pipe. And it was just awful.
See, what you had to do is roll the tinfoil up into a pipe and you cinch it at the end so the meth doesn't go through the crack, just the smoke does.
Yeah,
Only an old head would know that,
We've been delivered from
crazy. And and have zero desire for that stuff. I'm around people sometimes, they're smoking weed, and I'm like,
yeah, forget about it.
I just have no desire for that anymore,
No. And think of, how good God is. That in your case, I believe if our story was similar in this, but man, I didn't really want nothing to do with God. When the things that I was doing that led me into that trip, I was listening to King Diamond, this known Satanist, his music where there are demonic whispers in there. While I was doing LSD, I didn't want nothing to do with God. And it was almost even against my will. He reached down there when I was in the pit and pulled me out. That's why I know it's true that God, it's not people make it like, go get your thing right. And then,
and then come in. Yeah.
And then like, yeah, right, man. In your homosexuality, in your addiction, in your drunkenness and whatever, in your adultery, God, his grace meets you there and is able to pull you up out. It's amazing, man. God is so.
Church is a hospital. You would never see a doctor walking around a hospital mad at the patients because they're sick.
That's good.
That's how ministry is. It's like now you're not necessarily going to put a crackhead in charge of your nursery, but there are boundaries.
Yeah, that's true.
So in Portland, right? Maybe we'll kind of talk about the state of the nation. And I have some international friends, and I speak to them, and they're, people are always kind, but you can tell there's kind of this mindset of, you guys just have been comfortable for so long over there that this unrest is, it's our everyday life in some situations, but so you're not far from Portland. I mean, what's it like being out there? We had a little bit of that unrest going on here. There was a Wendy's burned in Atlanta because there was someone shot there, and there was kind of not quite a chop, but you guys had that's where CHOP was in Portland, wasn't it?
They're trying to, they've been trying to start one, but I don't know how.
Where was that? Was that in Seattle? That was in Seattle. That's right.
That's about 2 hours north from us.
Okay.
There's 2,000 protesters right now out there. They've been out there 58 days, I believe.
Wow.
Just fighting the feds, because there's a federal building, so they got feds over there, and they're they're firebombing the place. It's a federal building, and people are all wondering, well, these federal agents are pulling up, grabbing people, putting them in unmarked cars, and then out whatever they're doing there. The federal building that's being attacked, and there are some peaceful protesters, of course there are, but it's like those Antifa and those
the Soros funded professional Marxist branch of what's trying to happen out there.
Yeah, it's crazy. People will think we're crazy for believing what you just said, but I think it's true.
Yeah, I mean, protesters don't have that kind of longevity. There's something fueling that fire, and it's, ultimately, if you trace it all the way back, it's the enemy that wants to destroy humanity. But so without getting into the political side and picking sides and all that, and so in Portland, you're watching things. Does it affect your area? Are you seeing any type of racial division, ripple effects? Is it putting a strain on your congregation? Is it putting a strain on you? I mean, what's been the effect of the unrest out there?
I think we're fortunate to a certain degree, because as much as Portland is just going crazy right now. We're somewhat removed from it. We're in an area where like there's Gales Creek up one way, there's Gaston and Banks, and there's these places where most of the people around here wear camo, and even the women wearing stuff. So we have a lot of hunters.
Kind of like where we live.
Yeah, bro. I mean, it's nothing to see a truck run by with an American flag and a Trump 2020 flag on the other side. And Antifa would not come around here because they get clocked. They don't want to come over here. So we're somewhat removed from it, but there's no doubt that there's still there's some division. I had just recently posted something about the mask wearing, and I was one of those, to be quite honest, and I'll just be honest, because the masks, in my opinion, that I've studied a lot about, don't do anything. They don't do anything. I'm telling you, and especially the way that people are wearing them. They're actually, it's sad because a false sense of security. You wear the mask. If your health is compromised, don't go out with the mask. It's not going to do anything for you. If you want an article, I can post it in the comment section. Okay. Anyway,
I think most people realize that, it's like protect those that are vulnerable, protect the weak. If you are, like when my mom was sick and fighting cancer, if she had been alive during this, I would personally have been a lot more protective over myself, and because I was with her so much, but if you're in that kind of a situation, then but yeah, I mean, like you're saying, studies are showing they're not that effective. It's not like it's actually, if you can still smell, well, I'm not going to go there, but
it's just so with it, but it became a very divisive thing, and so I'll just rewind a bit. Is that so? I was one of these folks who were saying what they're trying to do is strip away your liberty, get you to take a little bit, and before you know it, then it's, hey, you got to get the vaccine that they just created in months. That doesn't happen. I'm not taking a vaccine, bro, until
I'm not either. We're anti-vax for sure.
Yeah, man. So I'm not doing that. But if you will wear the mask, think how easily people say, okay, I'll wear the mask. I will wear the mask wherever you tell me. Give me vaccine, and But so it became a very divisive issue. But then at the end of the day, I ended up, now I wear the mask because why? The Apostle Paul and the words that he said to the church with regard to meat. Well, that for sure. But I would with the folks who recognize that meat sacrificed to idols, who cares? I can eat this stuff. It's nothing. But the others saying, I think it's something. And then Paul goes to those who are supposed to be mature, says, guys, don't do anything. Just don't eat the meat around them, okay? And I felt like he was telling that to me as I sat innocently at the kitchen table, and he brought that verse to mind, and I thought, what? Why? Why do I always have to be the grown-up? Why don't I have to be mature? Suck my thumb. So I wore the mask, but more than.
But you know what? That's a great point, though. I want to talk a little bit more about that, about the responsibility of influence. But where were you going now? More than the mask, you were saying.
Well, I guess it's more than that. Is people, they're looking at us as influencers for answers to questions, right?
Yeah.
Should I wear the mask or not? Well, at first I would have said, I don't know. At the end of the day, I said, you know what? For the love and care and concern for your neighbor, if they think it makes them feel safe, just wear the mask. It doesn't do a thing, but just do. Okay. Well, then, so that's one matter. But then as they look to us, okay, well, what about Black Lives Matter? And they're frustrated that Rudy has not said on Facebook or from the front saying, hey guys, just so you know, Black Lives Matter. And I listen, do they? Man, absolutely. Look, I'm brown. I'm Mexican. I trust me, man. I've been called a wetback and every other thing. I know what it is. Now, not to the degree that many Black folks have experienced. Absolutely not. And I do recognize that there's still racism, man. People, of course there is. There's racist cops, racist judges, and all that. But when I'm asked about the Black Lives Matter movement, it's that entity, man.
Yeah.
It's craziness in that thing.
Yeah. You're talking about the organization apart from the actual racial issue.
Yes, the issue. That's of course Black
I
Lives.
posted about that. I haven't actually posted a lot about it either, but I did post about the organization Black Lives Matter, because if you go to their website, it's basically a couple of lesbians that started an organization to kind of piggyback gay rights issues onto racial issues.
Mhm.
And they're just different things. I have friends that are all for, gay rights and all that kind of stuff, but they will even make the distinction between that. There's a distinction between sexual behavior and your ethnicity,
Mhm.
and that's so to me, the most concerning thing, Black Lives Matter, the organization, is right there on their website. They want to break down the nuclear family,
Mhm.
which is there's a lot to be said of the welfare system and all of that. I don't want to go into a whole lot of that, but that's an affront to the model that God gave us to be in family. And we see, no matter what color, no matter what region, no matter what country, no matter what ethnicity, if there's not a father in the home, there's going to be more crime in those. And if you have the more fatherlessness that there is all across the board of all humanity, you see the types of issues that we're seeing in these movements right now. And it's a problem. We need leaders within each culture to rise up and point us back to Jesus. And, I can't say, well, the past is the past, get over it, because I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like for you to be a minority in this country. I'm a white dude in the South, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Stuff that you've been through. But, so I have just kind of settled in on the spiritual element, pointing people to unity in Christ, talking about compassion and love. And I mean, it's kind of generic and it's kind of a no-brainer, but then again, it's also needed, because I get messages from people who are saying, you guys are like some of the calmest people that I know right now on the internet, and I'm in another country, but I appreciate what you're doing. You're just helping me have a level of sanity.
That's really good. That's why I try to focus on the main thing. And I think
Right.
it was you who actually encouraged me in this. I've been feeling the
Oh
pull
yeah.
to be
To have to
a
comment on
political
all these things.
commentator.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a
Why do
couple
I?
of weeks ago.
Yeah, and that really spoke to me, man. It really, and I appreciate you. You really set me free from that mindset. I go, yeah. Why am I allowing people to put me in that role of political commentator? Well, first of all, I am not even qualified to do that. Really,
Right.
with learning about Black Lives Matter and Marxism, I heard that, but what is that? So I only
Yeah.
barely in the last month discovered what that is. So
Right.
I'm not informed enough to be a political commentator. Sure, I have my opinions and stuff, but that's why I finally I said, yeah, I'm just going to continue to preach Christ crucified and this
That's right.
incredible grace of God, and communicate to people the need to actively love your neighbor.
Hmm.
And if we were doing that, if people were actually living out what the gospel says, or just being like Jesus, racism would come to an end. We wouldn't have
Right.
those issues anymore. There wouldn't be injustice and murder and all that. So the change really needs to come from the heart out. I mean, we can
Hmm.
fine, you go ahead and defund police, all those things. They think that that's going to do away with whatever systemic racism there might be. No, it's just going to keep, racism's going to still exist. The people need
Right.
a heart transformed by Christ. So that's what I'm just focusing on, that the grace of God, and let's be serving actively
Right.
be the church in our community,
Our
man. We
love
do
for
that
one
in
another
the
should
world.
compel the world that we follow Jesus, and should compel them to desire him also. I'm writing the book on it literally right now.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. That's excellent. I'll be first in line for that book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've just it's hard because, like you have, man, you have people from around the world now who are
Hmm.
following you. That's awesome, and it's such a tremendous responsibility that we have. And so that's why I think it's really important for me to not let people push me to make a particular political
Right.
statement that's going to only either confirm their bias or sway folks one way or the other. And I get, maybe
Well,
I'm
here's the problem in that, and the people that are willing to do that is, it's the same thing that the Israelites did to Moses. God delivered the Israelites out of Egypt.
mm,
God said, okay, Moses, go get everybody and bring them to me, and I'm going to come down and meet with them. And the Israelites said, we don't want to do that. We saw what he did to the Egyptians. You go talk to him. And
mm,
so Moses acquiesced. I wonder, you know, I'm not a Calvinist. I think things could have changed. I think people could have made different decisions all along the way. I think Pharaoh could have said, "What am I doing? I think I'd rather worship this Lord, this God."
Hmm.
But because he didn't, then God turned him over to his own reprobate heart, reprobate mind. But so the Israelites are talking. God tells Moses, "Go tell them that I want to meet with them and speak with them." They go. Moses comes down, tells them that. They said, "No, you go talk to him for us." And that's what people are doing. They're trying to put you in the position to go talk to God for them, put you in the position to be their pope, put you in the position to be their prophet that hears God for them. Which is why, I think it's important for us to teach people how to hear God for themselves.
Absolutely.
And, we're trying the best we can to hear from God for ourselves and for our vision and what we're trying to do and our lives and our place in this country, which is like the bottom of the line. But yeah, I would encourage all pastors, don't feel like you have to do that. And
Hmm.
don't feel like that you're gonna, because I have people asking me, well, I need to know how to think about this. And I'm like, well, pray.
Mm.
You have the same Holy Spirit that I do. I will teach you who you are in Christ,
There you go.
and then you go talk to God,
That
because
is
I'm not coming down off the mountain with a list of 10 commandments for you to do.
God,
What God tells you to do might be different than what he tells me to do. Um,
excellent, man. That's why I love the way you preach, man. You know how to communicate truth well. So then, what do we do when November rolls around and you know Trump's in or Trump's out or Biden's in or I mean maybe Kanye, I don't know. Um, at what point do Christians take a stand politically? I mean, is there a responsibility? Fine, don't come to me necessarily for what you should or shouldn't do with regard to BLM or what. But what
mhm,
is our responsibility in all of that? Because people
mhm,
they are going to ask, and because we do have influence and people look to us for answers. I mean, at what point do we or do we not? How do we involve ourselves in politics without
yeah.
getting wrapped up in? Is that somebody so at a certain point? Yes, I believe preaching the gospel to it is good. At what point though do we take action? So at this,
Mhm.
how do we rise up or should we against this Marxist agenda that seeks to really
Yeah.
destroy the nation as we know it and remove our freedoms? That's really, I think, we're close to that. I
Well,
it,
and you're see, this is interesting. This is what's interesting about this conversation, because we have a governor in Georgia that even excuse me, even when there were lockdowns, he kind of out of one side of his mouth said, but churches can still meet. He never really actually said that, but there
hmm,
was never any real kind of clampdown on churches. He asked churches to close, but there
hmm,
was never any kind of mandate. And most churches closed. I think there were some rural churches that stayed open. We closed for a
hmm,
month or so. I don't even remember now. I'd have to go back and look and see. But we were the first state to be able to open back up, and we've been meeting for a couple of months now. We had a case of COVID pop up in the church, and just out of an abundance of caution, we did close down for a week, which gave us a 2-week cycle. But I can understand why you're in that, you're asking those questions, because where you are, your state is on lockdowns. You can't meet. I mean, so like your state is not allowing churches to meet. Is that correct?
you can, but there's limits, of course. Like
There's
for us,
limits,
it's where we can have 25 people in our auditorium
right?
right now.
Which
25.
is probably your kids' church team.
Yeah, right. Seriously, it's not very so. At once phase two, whenever that happens, we can have 78 people based on square footage. So there's not a lot
Oh, it's
of
based on square
experience.
footage thing.
Now,
Yeah,
some people are defying that. There's
yeah.
churches that are saying, "We, you're not going to, you're not going to take away my religious freedom, so we're going to meet anyway." So folks are doing it. I don't personally know any folks that are doing that around here, but it's happening.
Well, and so, it's a good question. And you ask the question, at what point do we fight, stand up, whatever? And it's like, I think that's why unity in the body is so important, because people like you and I can talk, and I can watch what you're going through, and you can watch what I'm going through, and we can communicate and share and learn from each other and develop strategies. I don't think any one person has the answer. And it's certainly not going to come from the government. I mean, that really, if I'm a limited government guy. I'm like, let's make them absolutely as small as possible. Let's get them out of everything, including marriage and everything. Get them out of our lives as much as possible, and only protecting those God-given liberties. But
Mhm.
so I I can't say that I would know when's the time. I would guess if they say so. Like I read an article this morning in China. Xi Jinping has sent out his military force into rural areas where there's Christians, and I'm reading stories about where the Chinese government is forcing Christians to take down their, their religious imagery, their crosses, their pictures of Jesus, and put up images of Mao Zedong, who killed millions of them, and then also the new, whatever his title is, and one of the guys that was going through enacting this in China in this home said, "These are your gods. Worship these gods." So, if that were to start happening, so like, but we don't want to be the frog in the water that doesn't know it's getting hotter, and we're just a little bit at a time giving up, giving up a little bit of room. I don't, you may feel it a little bit further because of where you are. I don't feel the pinch yet that it's a direct assault on Christianity. Maybe somebody like a Gavin Newsom might hold that opinion and think that it's a good idea for, Christianity to go away. Like a Bill Gates, I've heard him say specifically that somebody asked him about the Bible, and he said, well, you'd be better off reading a book about history or something like that, So, I mean, there are people that believe that way. And if those people do start passing legislation specifically against us, of course, it's time to, rise up in whatever that might look like. But I don't know, I wonder, are we that far?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point, because at this point, the fact that we can't gather, that is a drag. And I do miss people. I'm communicating to an empty space. It's
right.
As we can. So yeah, I miss gathering with our peeps. But I'm not ready yet to defy the orders, because like you're saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not everybody across the board. I just watched a baseball game the other day. I don't even like baseball. It was just on the thing. How awkward, man. This thing's empty. So it's all around. Everybody's suffering this lack of this freedom to gather. So it's not just like only Christians can't. So that's where I think I agree with you. That's not right now. But if they start to do what you're saying they're doing in China, which the early church experienced, that's when they kicked back and said, no, we're not going to bow down to your gods. We're not going to do that. So they would push back, but I don't think they were out there trying to change laws necessarily. But when it counts, then I think we'll have to rise up. So I don't think right now the building not being able to be open.
Yeah, because like you said, it's restaurants, it's movie theaters, it's bars, it's gosh. So I have a couple of news apps I was flipping through. People are adapting. There are even drive-through strip clubs now. I'm thinking, if you're that desperate that you're going to go drive through, I don't even know. But it made me think, the nightclub scene, which we know that there's a lot of disgusting behavior that goes on, but some of those, my dad owned a bar in Atlanta, and it was a restaurant bar, and there were obviously people that would come there that would abuse alcohol, but a lot of those people, is kind of like a Cheers thing. They'd come, they didn't have families, they'd come sit around the bar and hang out and eat some wings, and the regular people. I learned to DJ and they were like 11 years old. I forgot about that. And so I'm not advocating night clubbing, bar hopping, but so even those are shut down right now too.
That's true.
Boy, we're all over the place here on this conversation, but
we are.
Go ahead.
This is another rabbit trail, but ministry happens in places like that. That's why
absolutely
people
well, and you play in places like that because you're a magician, you're a musician. You even here's how I know you're the coolest pastor on the planet. You have a beer named after you.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I had a few of them. So friends, they owned Walt's Brewing up the road, and there's a hop that's called Rudy. It's Rudi. So they called the beer. They said, well, we're going to call it Pastor Rudy's IPA. So I'm like,
that's
what?
Awesome.
So that was really cool. So they called it Pastor Rudy's IPA. Well, then I have a friend who is a member of our church, and he's Jonathan Kaiser. He has Kaiser Brewing. Well, him and I are boys. He goes, well, I'm not going to be outdone by them. So he has the Tinoco Loco lager. It's like a Mexican lager.
Tinoco Loco.
So it's so there's that one. And then I had gotten enough food and stuff from meetings at one particular place in town, Ridgewalker Brewing, where if you get a certain amount of points, you can have a beer named after you. So they call it a Pastor Rudy's Freedom IPA. So 3 brews. It's great.
That's crazy.
Which hasn't come without some controversy. Now, listen, absolutely.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, you're probably going to hell over that, you know. But.
Yeah, for sure. You know, because people think that, and rightfully so, I have to be cautious of
right,
being in the
of course.
And, you know, to be drunk with wine, absolutely, we got okay. It says be filled with the Spirit, and don't be it just, you have freedom, but in that, don't use it as a license to
don't shove it in people's face, right?
So I'm mindful of that, but
of course,
it's also allowed me to have a lot of influence in this community. It's a small community, but so I've had just in a week and a half, 3 times where somebody came up to me. One, at the winery I was performing at, one of the tasting room ladies came after the event was over, and she said, "Can you and Charlene come over here?" And she was crying. She says, "Can you guys pray for me?" Okay, well, how does she know that I'm one that she can come to? Because we try to be Christ there in those places. Yeah. I was at
so this was a gig that you had playing some music, because you do that. You play like around here, a lot of, not anything by this, but there's a lot of Mexican restaurants where you will have people that they have different little bands set up in the corner playing some music, you know.
Sure.
So that type of thing.
Yeah, I do acoustic covers of pop hits from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today. So I'll do Kenny Loggins 1 minute and then Prince another, you know. So, but you know, it just, there's opportunities if we have our eyes open to be in those spaces where some church folk go, well, what are you be doing at the pub? Or why are you always at David Hill Winery? Well, I'm a member there. I play music there. But also people, a woman came up to me. This was bizarre. This a friend, she's one of the tasting room ladies. She came, I went to go do some work there, and she came, she goes, "I'm so glad you're here because I had a crazy dream and I don't know what it means." She goes, and first, she hasn't been to church since she's 22 years old. Yeah. She's now well into her 40s. And she said, in my dream, there was a figure. I couldn't see the face, but it said something about Deuteronomy. And she goes, I don't even know what that was. She had to look in her Bible to see what is that. Googled it Wikipedia anyway. Well, when I got there, interestingly, I'm going to be talking about this weekend. I'm going to be talking about the Good Samaritan. You know, and there's an expert in the law. And when she says, okay, so what does the law say, right? And he says that love God with all your heart, mind, soul, strength. Okay, love your neighbor yourself. And Jesus, that's the thing. Well, that is in Deuteronomy. I think it's chapter 5, 8 or something like that. But see, so I was able to take this woman at a winery. She comes to me with the dream she has. And now I said, I'm not trying to interpret your dream, but I think it's interesting that I'm studying this. Could it be that God is saying, pursue him with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and, you know, and get back to what you were doing 20 years back when you were 22? And I don't know what that dream means, but see, but I was able to be there. And a lot of Christians would, you know, in fact, they do think that I'm carnal for going to places like that. All right, well, listen, sometimes can I be carnal? Yeah. Every once in a while, do I find myself in a place of compromise where I'm like, okay, you know what, Rudy, actually you had one more and you knew you're probably going past what your limit should be. I've done that, of course, man. I'm human. And I'm the first to, again, man, the condemnation, like, see, you're a pastor and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Or they're right about you. See how you be using your freedom as a license. And I have to fight and go, wait, no, in the name of Jesus, man, I'm the righteousness of God in Christ. No, I'm not. But it's good. What it reminds me of is when I'm there, I sure as heck better be mindful. I better retain sobriety, and so I can have clarity of mind. So when they come to me, I can give a word and I could speak into their life, not all like, well, you know, slurring my words, giving them some biblical truth.
Dancing on the tabletop, swinging your shirt around. Speaking of shirts, by the way, what does your shirt say? I asked you earlier before we went live. It looks like ultra religious until you see this part.
I never said that. Jesus. Yeah,
Where'd you get that? Is that just online? Is that an online purchase?
Yeah, I ordered online because sometimes when I'm doing a certain message, I'll wear a t-shirt that kind of reflects that.
Okay.
Through whatever it may be. Like one time I was using Tupac's shooting as a thing to speak about how look like Tupac got shot, and it was in Vegas, man. If you've been to Vegas, the strip is packed, but nobody saw anything. And people got hurt. People died in relation to Tupac getting shot. Why? Because people kept their mouths shut. They didn't want to say nothing. And so I was using that as a thing to talk about. You guys are witnesses to a truth. You not saying stuff, you doing like this, people get hurt, people die. So I had a Tupac shirt on that. So
yeah,
I just used that straight truth.
Probably a conversation starter too. He didn't say what. Well, let me just tell you. Here's the opportunity to preach the gospel. I like it. So I don't think I ever have asked you. You mentioned it before. So where did you grow up? You say you're Mexican. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in San Jose, California, born and raised there. Spent most of my life there. I've only been up here in Oregon for 20 years now. So most of my life was spent San Jose. I'm only right now actually in the process of learning Spanish because while my mom and my grandma, they're fluent and I understand it very well, I never learned it because we weren't really back when we were kids. They're like, you speak English, you're in America, and so that's what we spoke. And so now I'm in the process of learning. We do have a lot of Mexican folks here in our community that I could be ministering to. Most of them are Catholic and love our Catholic brothers and sisters, but they don't grasp the gospel message really. So if I can convey that to them, I'm about that. So I'm about 80% fluent now. So I'm working.
Oh, really? Nice. So did you grow up Catholic?
I grew up Buddhist.
Really?
Mexican Buddhist. Isn't that crazy?
Mexican Buddhist. That sounds like another beer title.
Yeah, dude. My mom and my dad. I mean, well, I was baptized Catholic, but that didn't last long. My dad and my mom had a friend. My dad was also a musician, so they met a lot of people. And they met a woman named Luana, I believe her name was, and they introduced her to Buddhism. And we went. I mean, their youth group was called Junior Pioneers. So I would be Junior Pioneers chanting. I still remember the chant. I could hear it.
There's a Buddhist youth group.
Yeah, essentially it's huge because we would go to like a temple of sorts. And it was multi-ethnic, Black, white, Mexican, Asian would be there all kneeling and chanting to what's called a butsudan. It's a box with the scroll in the thing. And we would pray, and I would be there praying with my family. So we were Buddhist until my mom married my stepdad, who was a Christian. He first came into Buddhism and then said, no, in the name of Jesus, we're not doing this. And he started to take us to church. I was reluctant because he was my stepdad, and I was like, you're not my daddy. I want to be Jesus. But God had other plans. My uncle led me to Jesus at 12, and that planted that seed that began to bear fruit.
That just opened up a whole nother thing. Maybe a few more minutes on that if you don't mind. But so it's like, because you hear about Buddhism, and I even read a lot and studied a lot, and it was almost personal application and practice, more so than the organ. But you're talking about straight up legit organized Buddhism.
Totally.
Going to a temple. So were there people that would teach? And what did they teach from? And what was the goal? So what was the goal of that type of organization?
There really wasn't a lot of teaching, unless I was a kid, so my memory was hundreds of people chanting. You would do that too. At a certain point, I can remember
in English.
The chanting is all in, I think it's Sanskrit. So
you learn mantras.
Yeah, and it's in a little book, and after a while you just memorize it because it's so repetitive, and you say the same things. And we would go then into another space. So maybe when we went in there, they would teach, but I don't quite remember there being a lot of the teaching aspect. So I'm not quite sure.
Was that viewed as an act of work? I mean, like you said, you were a kid. Was that an act of worship of an entity?
It was an act of worship / prayer, I believe, all wrapped up into one thing. I don't even know what the scroll actually said, nor do I even know what those words meant that we're praying. I would hesitate to even Google what it is. Who knows what we're praying?
Yeah.
But there was just this belief that as you are chanting repetitively, you pray, and those things, the universe will respond. It was everything about karma and all of that
Okay.
stuff wound up in there.
Wow.
I'll have to ask
I
my
don't think I've.
mom. That's a really good question. But what I never experienced any peace in my heart about it. In fact, I would say it's quite haunting to hear all those voices together in unison, chanting stuff that you can't quite get your mind around. I mean, no wonder, man, I've been haunted by all my life, Clint. I mean, what's interesting about my journey, and which is very much like yours, was that what you and I saw, those terrifying things, have been with me since I was a little boy. I can remember being little. I must have been 6, and I was standing out in the playground, and I don't remember what some kid said to me. He said something to me that was profoundly terrifying. It left me stuck. I was so terrified. I was just standing out there. They had to come and get me. But he said something about, I can't even remember, but it was something pertaining to the things that we saw, something about reality, something about something. It's been like that all the time. I can remember moments where, like when I was, again, even when I wasn't high, things would break into my reality of like, I think I told you one time when I was sitting with my daughter. She was only 5 at the time. And then my 2 friends were with me, and I could see something in their face, bro. You know, when you think about the people that you were looking at back then when you were tripping, you're looking like something, you're something in their eyes, or something in their intent toward me was, I couldn't quite make out. And then in that moment, again, I'm not high or anything. In that moment, that terror, it just like falls on me. And I say to my daughter, who's only 5, I say, Christina, what's going on? She goes, I don't know, their faces are changing. Now, that's
so she saw it too.
Yeah, but what's weird though, Clint, is that, like, she said,
you perceived it as she was in on it, I think, at the time, right?
Well, for sure. Well, but it was weird. She was like an observer, because she didn't. It's weird, the phrasing of it, because I saw her. I was looking at their eyes, and it was shifty to me. Like, are you for me or against me? Are you Judas or Jesus? It was like a weird thing. My daughter said their faces are changing, but their faces weren't changing. Their intent was. So now, what do I do with that? What do you do with that? I mean, that defies reality. And it's those moments like that I've had over and over in my life. People saying weird stuff that's unreal. Now, am I insane? Is it that my daughter didn't really? I know what I know. In fact, I asked my friend Mike, why did she say that? Your faces are changing? He goes, well, I don't know. Why? It was like he was hiding something from me. And it's that suspicion that the enemy used to continue to keep me in fear. In fact, the reason, like you, as I thought I was dead for a number of months, I had to really reverse that truth on the devil by using Galatians 2:20. Say, yeah, you know what, I did that day.
You're right. I am. That's right.
Yeah, and and I am to reckon myself dead. Romans 6:11. So yeah, I was dead, but not the way that you're telling me, devil. So I had to really redo my thinking.
It's a battle. It's true mental, spiritual warfare, which all takes place in your mind.
It's horrible that the devil, while I know he's defeated, man, he's not given enough credit for how deceptive he is. He's wily, bro. The way people can't be so casual about him and the tactics he uses, because he will stop at nothing. Here, I don't know whether he influenced my daughter, or it's just the innocence of a 5-year-old who just sees things in the realm that we don't, because we've been closed off to it. And she goes, I don't know, I see it too, Dad. It's just,
well, it sounds like the gift of discerning of spirits on her part. She recognized what was going on with them, even at 5.
So it's been all my life that, and I think, how much did Buddhism invite demonic forces into our lives? And we've had traumatic stuff. My brother Bobby was only 16 when he shot himself and died in a car, and they're in front of the high school. Our lives have been marked with a lot of destruction and addiction and trauma. So Buddhism, it didn't work for us because we experienced all kinds of hell. So
Yeah.
man,
Well, and so then you eventually find Jesus, and then you find the gospel,
mm-hmm.
and here you are now a pastor. I would bet that it's because I have these thoughts. It's like sometimes you're because because it's not a title that I ever was interested in.
Yeah,
All the way back from getting saved to being delivered to going to that first church that I was going to and watching Pastor David Michael preach, and then just in my heart feeling like that's what I'm going to do. I just want to tell people about Jesus. I still feel that way. I really do. Sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, I'm a pastor. I wonder if, and you almost have to like locate that in your mind. You know what I mean? And then you're like, well, I don't, but I know what I'm talking about. We won't go too deep into that, but
yeah. That's why I don't even let people. Not that I don't let people. When you watch my messages, bro, listen. I don't go. Hi, I'm Rudy Tinoco. I'm the lead pastor of blah blah blah. I don't even.
right.
I just say hi. It's hi guys. Thank you
Yeah,
for
Rudy.
me, Rudy, or
Yeah.
Rude. Sometimes I don't like the title very much, and of course I know I'm not against it completely, right? I understand people want to, and I'm actually
And people, it's a sign of respect and honor that people will give towards you. I have people that call me pastor, and they're like some of my closest friends. But for them, it's a respect thing.
yeah. There's no harm in it. I think maybe it's first of all is that I'm more of a teacher now than I am pastoring. So that if you can call me something,
Okay.
say, hey, hi, teacher Rudy, which that sounds lame, and then also maybe the second part is that for the sake of not getting puffed up, because I'm human. I know me. And we can be like those that are described in the scriptures, like, oh, you just love going to the marketplace. So people be saying, oh, hey, pastor, 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 pastor. It's like, no, it's far better for me that you can casually say, hey, oh, that's just rude, and you totally approach him. And I don't like things that create distance. I don't call it the pulpit. So I'm a nonconformist in ways that are bad, and in some ways I think that are good, and that help remove some of those barriers between the people
Right.
who are communicating with. The more it's like, hi, I'm lead pastor, and I'm speaking to you from the pulpit. I'd much rather have this sense where people recognize, because it's true, that I'm just like you. The same Holy Spirit that's in me is in you. He doesn't play favorites. He loves you as much as he loves me. I don't have some special powers when I pray. So I'm trying as best as possible to remove barriers that have been put up between those who are the communicators, the pastors, that have kept people from feeling like they can actually live the Christian life. Well, and there's some stuff about that we don't have to get into, but Christ living his life through you is probably the better way of putting it. None of us can live the Christian life, but Christ,
of course, you yield to let him live it through you.
Right. So I know that's true, but people they think, oh gosh, Pastor Rudy's his life must be perfect. They're like, no, that's why I always tell people how jacked up I am. That's why I'm willing to tell you in front of everybody who watch on Facebook. Yeah, there's been times when I'll have one more drink than I know I should, because I'm dumb and I'm human sometimes, a lot of the time, right? So, and I have carnal moments too, and I gotta fight that, and then that renew my mind to the truth. Say, Rude, that's not who you are, So, anyway, this is awesome, bro. Can't we just do this every day?
This like therapy.
Right. Is anybody even watching? I didn't look at the thing.
There were, I think it was up like 10 people at one time. I'm still kind of learning this whole system here. So I've got everything muted on Facebook. There is a little bit of a delay. One of the things that I had envisioned is making it a little bit interactive and chatting with people, but this type of conversation doesn't really lend itself to that. But also too, I'm going to leave it up, and a lot of people are going to watch it again. And if it's cool with you, and I forgot to hit record on this, but I can download, I think, from Facebook, and then if I can put it on YouTube, is that good with you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's good, even for I'll share it with my church family, just letting them see two pastors, similar heart, similar understanding of God's grace and his kindness to us, and also seeing how very human we are, and
Right.
that it gives them a little bit of a behind the scenes look at what's going on. Like that, I don't know all the answers, man. I have more questions now than ever, and it's good for us to admit that to people.
Yeah.
Oh man. Anyway, this has been awesome, Clinton. Again, I want to just say it again. You have been such a huge influence on my life, just in my understanding of God. That your messages of grace that God has spoken through you have brought great comfort to my heart in moments where fear was trying to press in on me. Your messages, your book, ministered to my heart and still do. That's why you're still on repeat. That's why I really can't say enough that I believe that what you're doing, Forward Church, you personally through your writing, your ministry has impacted me significantly, and I pray that God will continue to grow it. It'll continue, and I know it will. Just flourish, and you'll get the building that you need, and all of those things. You're really one of the good guys, bro, and I thank God that I get to count you as a friend.
I appreciate that, man. And it would be ditto back to you. I appreciate it. And I think whatever it is that the Lord has for us to do together, whether it be individually or ministry focused, I almost kind of, we've known each other for a while, but never, haven't really joined forces, let's say. And I don't even know what that looks like, but I kind of feel that sense rising up. There's a few people also too that I think I would want you to meet that God seems to be kind of gathering here. And, so it's like, I've learned to recognize when God is moving in my life and make room for it and kind of host it and kind of nurture and put a little bit of water on that growth that's happening, and rather than trying to ask him to do something, rather than me coming up with an idea, and I still do that sometimes. It's like, hey, God, it'd be a really good idea if you did this, and that's what most people's prayer is. But anyway, I see this as that. And so if you have any insight into that or any comments, toward that about what that looks like, I don't know. I don't think we're starting a network or a conference or anything like that, but just, maybe it's like you said, the intentionality of just being real in front of people and nurturing the relationship along the way at the same time.
I love it. I'm in.
So because what I want to do with these particular videos. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want you to know, whatever it is, I'm in. You just let me know, and I'll pray on that and ask God to give us some supernatural creativity on how to approach that.
Amen. And so what I would say also to people that are watching, if you are connected with us with Forward Church, Forward Ministries, or you listen to my Tools for Transformation or any of that type of thing, and you are an influencer, in other words, you either have a church or a ministry in some sort of way, or a life group, like a small group in your home, any type of way where you're actually actively in ministry and our resources are in the mix there of what you use to influence your own heart that affects your ministry. That's kind of how I'm starting these conversations. And because you'd expressed that to me, that our ministry has impacted you that way, Rudy, I wanted to go there, but also just enjoy hanging out. There's a few more people that I'm going to be having in. I'm going to really try to do this weekly, and just kind of see where it goes. But I definitely want to do it with you. I mean, we'll stay in touch, of course, aside from it, but get you back on here.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll just go from there.
I'll tune in each week to watch what you're doing.